not going to spend a lot of time on all the good things we do there. Many of you know those better than I do. Rather, I'd like to spend some time on the topic of volunteering in general. Volunteering is by its nature an act of free will, a purposeful giving of one's time. It is ultimately bounded by how much one gets from it. Human desire to give is not boundless. There must be something in return, a sense of meaning or purpose, a sense of satisfaction. Volunteering cannot be forced. But more of that later. Let me step back a bit and give a little background on how I began to work with Gather the Spirit. So my family moved to Pennsylvania around 10 years ago with a 3-year-old son, Noah, who, by the way, is now about 5'10", and a 2-week-old daughter, Abby, who's now 10 years old. 2 things led us to UCH. First, Noah started to feel left out because everyone he knew went to church. Second, we had this girl in the neighborhood who would babysit for the kids, and we discovered one morning that she had been praying with the kids before bed at night, and we thought, okay, no big deal. But then she started telling Noah about her beliefs that women were subservient to men, and, well, that was not going to do. So we needed some other religious information to counteract this influence, because we certainly weren't going to just give up a good babysitter. So my wife started bringing the kids to UCH. I personally had never been a churchgoer. In fact, I come from a very proud tradition of lapsed Jews, so really never a churchgoer. So I came to UCH services some of the time, but it really just wasn't my thing. Doing the dishes at the Saturday breakfasts was something that appealed to me, though. The last time I spoke at a UCH service a few years ago with my family, I talked about this, that doing the dishes was for me a sort of worship, something I wanted to do because it gave me a sense of calm and satisfaction, a break from the stresses of my week and my job. So that is where things stood for about 3 or 4 years. So now I need to diverge a little bit into the history of Gather the Spirit for Justice. The programs at Market Street are many decades old and have been led by different churches, including the Shared Ministry, joined by UCH, until 2014. Always until that time, the programs were church programs. In 2011, the late Suzanne Marsh worked with others in the congregations to create a nonprofit corporation called Gather the Spirit for Justice, with the specific goal of supplementing church support for the programs with other sources of funds that churches typically cannot access. So the articles of incorporation were submitted and accepted by the state of Pennsylvania, and then things stalled for about 3 years because they could not form the required 6-person board of directors. There was not yet the will. Not enough people were yet moved to action. So things went on, and the churches continued to provide for the programs financially, through the use of the Market Street building, and through paid staff. So how did things get unstuck? And how did I become the president of the board? Well, in 2014, as UCH was starting to struggle a bit financially and seeking new leadership, a small group formed a board to start to seek external funding and alleviate some of the burden on the church. Tom Connors had asked me if I would be part of the board, and I agreed. And sometimes you agree to do something and you end up taking on much more than you expected. Basically, everyone else had a better excuse than I did for not being the president of the board. And so I became the board president. Over the next year, through much work led by Francis Myers, GTS became a nonprofit and took over the Market Street programs as a non-religious organization, completely separate from UCH, though still with a special relationship to the church. In the 3 years since, we have had many wins and some significant setbacks. Up until this spring, we continued to run the breakfasts 2 times per month. We still have the center open 3 times per week. We continue to serve food and give out advice and state IDs. About 200 people at each breakfast, and maybe 60 or more at each day during the week. We have raised, over 3 years, about $60,000 total, with help from some generous donors, giant food stores, churches like St. Stephen's with their fund run, a number of the UCC churches, UCH Share the Plate, and the Keystone Rotary, who, by the way, also worked with GTS this year to fund painting the kitchen at UCH's Market Street building, among their other support. We have had great volunteers from places all over the area: the Keystone Rotary, Isaac's, the Girl Scouts, Milton Hershey School, numerous churches, Penn State Medical Center, Messiah College, and so on. We have brought on new people like Sarah Ballard, Wanda Gibbons, Ryan Tobin, Tom Miller, Jackie Rucker, Beth Ann McCoy, and Darlene Kvaternick, John Hargraves, as well as Ann Lebo, Bob Schaefer, Guy Donnelly, and many others who have brought new energy and improved the way we operate. We are more safe and more organized than in the past. Others have stepped up their involvement as well. We've also had some significant setbacks. Losing UCH funding and support for staff, specifically Sparky and Kathleen, for good and understandable reasons, has been very challenging for us financially, along with paying rent to UCH, which increases by $50 per month every 6 months by design and is now at about $350 per month. The reason for these changes in GTS's relationship with UCH are understandable, but those costs, among others, have made our financial needs bigger than we had anticipated, about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. People who were deeply embedded and important to GTS have left us, again for good and understandable reasons. Sparky, Kathleen, Francis, Richard, Perry, Denny and Barb, Phil and Donna, Tom and Meg have had to either step away or in some cases just step back for a while for various reasons. In my role as president, I have also had to deal with a great many issues: hiring people, asking volunteers to step away, human resources issues. Mostly boils down to keeping the peace and keeping the balance between what GTS needs as an organization and what keeps those volunteers willingly coming back. Too much, they burn out. Too little, they become bored. Not enough volunteers, and things fall apart. One important thing that I learned through these challenges is that sometimes people take on what they think they should, and that is not enough. Take on what you are moved to do. Many times I have asked people to step aside because they agreed to do something and then could not or did not. Volunteering needs to be an act of free will, but also an act of self-knowledge. Knowing your own strengths and limitations and not overstepping them, it helps no one. So what is the future of GTS and what are our challenges? Well, I continue to believe that GTS is doing good work, feeding people, helping people with issues, etc. But we are definitely at a crossroads. Who do we want to be when we grow up? I can tell you it is a matter of collective free will. After a 3-year term, I have stepped down as president. It is time for someone else to take up that mantle, and Clay Lambert has agreed to take on that role of moving the organization forward. And anyone who knows Clay knows that he will be great. Our core volunteers are burning out. Sarah Ballard has been putting together 2 big breakfasts a month. It is a lot of work for someone who works full-time during the week, setting up the Friday before, making sure there are supplies and enough volunteers, and so on. So the board has decided to cut back to 1 breakfast per month, at least for now, until we find more volunteers who are willing to take on more of the burden. Can we get enough money? Our budget is $50,000 to $60,000 for the year. We have only raised $25,000 so far this year, and almost half of that came from 2 donors. We have not been able to find a fundraising lead to create fundraising events. So we are in discussions about cutting back to 2 days per week for the center to try to save money. To get through these challenges, we will need to clarify our mission, cut out things, and do different things that are grant-worthy. Do we have the will and the strength to stop doing things? That is sometimes the hardest challenge. But burned out and broke will help no one, and so we have hard decisions to make. I am optimistic that we will work through these challenges we always have in the past. People step up, new people take on the jobs of the previous, ultimately a series of acts of free will working in concert to make it all work. So what is my message? It is not really about our challenges, but about what it means to be a volunteer. I was once in a conversation where UCH members said that they felt harassed or shamed into being involved in the activities at Market Street. That is not what I'm looking to do here at all. I just want to give an honest assessment of the wins and the setbacks, the opportunities and the challenges that GTS has and will face, and to express my hope that UCH members and UCH will continue to be a part of that, but certainly not the only part. I have no doubt that many here already do and will continue to help in the future. In fact, if you'll indulge me for one moment, I want to try something. If you have ever been to a breakfast or helped out at the breakfast as a volunteer or at the center, would you stand up? If you have ever donated to GTS, stand up as well. If you have ever donated to Share the Plate, that has gone to GTS, stand up. If you have ever given to this church that really gives us an important break on our rent, stand up. So that should be probably just about everyone. So I just wanted to do that because, and you can have a seat, because I wanted to point out, this is not about recruiting. This is really an opportunity for me to share my thoughts about volunteering. There is this lyric to a song that we used to sing around the campfire when I was a kid. The strength to lead and the faith to follow, all are given unto me. This is true, that we all have innately within us the strength to lead and the faith to follow. They are gifts. It is up to us how, when, and where we use them. That is free will. In the end of the day, the Common Ground Cafe and the Community Center are volunteer organizations. They cannot function by shame or harassment, only through free will. If the Spirit moves you to come to the center or to donate to us or to take on a larger role, we welcome it. Believe me, we need the help. And if the Spirit moves you to do something else in the world, that is good too. If enough of us act out of free will in concert, GTS will continue to thrive. And if not, that is okay too, as long as we individually and collectively are seeking to do good in this world in ways that are meaningful. The serenity prayer of Ryman Niebuhr is incredibly familiar, maybe even a little cliche. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For me, this has become a new motto, and so I realize it is time to be involved in a different way, a time to follow, not to lead. I hope I have set up GTS for a great future. I will be honest that I wish it were a little stronger. But we have come very far. So I leave its future in your hands if you so choose, and in the hands of others if the Spirit so moves. So volunteer if that is what you are called to do, but it must be an act of free will. I will certainly be doing what the Spirit moves me to do, perhaps washing the dishes or cleaning the floors. And if you are ever free on a breakfast Saturday on our weekday morning and the Spirit moves you, grab a mop. We can use the help.